Sarah Ingram, a speech pathologist here at Blount Memorial, and let's talk about everybody's favorite topic, the brain. So on this side here, we have our healthy brain, and then on the right side there, we have a brain that has advanced Alzheimer's. As we age, it is typical for our brain to shrink. It is very typical. But, of course, we don't want it shrinking as much as our right side here. That's what we see with advanced Alzheimer's. That shrinkage is due to a loss of brain mass due to dying neurons in our brain. So those neurons die off and we start to kind of lose those abilities. But of course, Becky Hill will talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. So what I'm going to talk to you about is our healthy aging brain. So what is normal? All right, so I'm going to say a thing that you might experience, and if this happens to you, raise your hand. All right, if you don't want to, you can just little thing here. All right, so temporarily forgetting names. Very good. Where you put your keys. Yep. Forget the day of the week. Forget why you entered a room. I have a 3-year-old son at home. I never quite know why I'm in a room until I circle back around. But let's see. Made a mistake with paying a bill. I've done that, right? My goodness. Occasionally struggle to find the right word. Sometimes it just doesn't quite come to us, right? Sometimes we feel maybe fatigued by obligations or irritable when a change is made to our plan. Oh, I know. I get that way too. So these are all things that the Alzheimer's of Tennessee website describes as normal aging. So woohoo! That is great. So the key to this is that these things are not happening all the time. They are happening every once in a while, and if we make a mistake, we're able to organize and strategize our way around it to try to make a safe and rational solution. So those are some things there. Now, we know that there are some factors that can impact how our brain functions. So on a typical day, if I wake up and eat my Wheaties for breakfast and I have a good night of sleep, I am not stressed or depressed, I am going to be able to rule the world, right? But we know that there are some factors that can impact our cognitive function. Some things like stress or busyness, pain, illness, depression. Those things can definitely have a negative impact on how our brain is functioning. The good news is a lot of those things are reversible. Some other things that are reversible when it comes to impacting our brain are things like normal pressure hydrocephalus, infection, such as urinary tract infections. Those are a pretty big culprit. Alcohol or alcohol abuse, low B12, thyroid disease, like I said, depression, it's a big one. Cancer or chemo brain, sometimes people experience that. Uncontrolled diabetes and uncontrolled blood pressure. Both of these factors can impact either high, if they're too high, or too low. we want to keep an eye on those to make sure that our brain is functioning the way that we want it to. So now I'm going to turn things over to Becky Hill, and she's going to talk to us about some things that may not be reversal.
Yes, my name is Becky, and so what I'm going to do today is Sarah did an excellent job telling us about the normal aging brain, because we know our brain does get a little bit older, more mature. I like to say mature, just like our body does. But what is normal? What is abnormal? Okay, so I'm going to use a scenario today to give you an example of how we would respond in a situation with a normal aging brain and an abnormal aging brain, or the early onset of a dementia or a cognitive impairment. So we're going to start off with short-term memory, because that is what we are the most concerned about, of course. This is something that we start to see as we get mature, okay? It's scientifically proven that at age 85, our memory is going to get a little bit, it's going to take us a little bit longer to process information, a little bit longer to recall that information. So here's a scenario, okay? Mary is sitting in her chair by her husband, and they're talking about having dirty clothes in the bedroom. And Mary says, I need to do laundry, okay? She gets up, she gets the laundry basket from the bedroom and walks to the laundry room. The telephone rings. She has to put the laundry basket down, answer the phone. Conversation may be like this from Sue. Well, hello, Sue. Hi. No, I'm not busy today. What? Meet at the mall for lunch? Sure, we can meet outside of Belk. Yes, you're right. If we meet there, we'll only be a hop, skip, and a jump away from the restaurants. Sure, I can meet at 12. Yes, I have pictures of my grandchildren. They are as cute as a button. I can't wait to see you and catch up. Mary hangs up the phone. Mary goes, what was I doing? What was I going to do? And so our young brain, when our brain was about 25 years old, we could kind of look around, see the laundry basket, and oh yes, that's right. I was going to do laundry. Pick up the laundry basket, go do laundry, okay? Guess what? When we get to be about 55, our normal aging brain goes, what was I doing? What was I going to do? Let me go back into that room where I was a few minutes ago and sit down in that chair. And now I can't just rely on visual cues. I need that tactile cue of where I was sitting, the verbal cues of what we were talking about, then the visual. Oh yes, that's right. I was going to do laundry. And we do it, okay? We do the laundry, we get ready, we meet Sue at the mall, but guess what? We now have forgotten to bring the baby pictures, okay? We do everything else, and that's because when we were younger, our brain could hold about 5 to 7 pieces of information at a time. Normal aging brain, we now can only hold about 3 or 4 pieces of information. So we get all of that, but we forget the one step. But we remember as soon as we're reminded, okay? That's normal. Abnormal may be this. Mary hangs up the phone, completely forgets what she was doing, looks around and sees that there's dishes in the sink. Mary starts to wash the dishes and like, who in the world left all these dishes in my kitchen? Somebody ate lunch, left these dishes here. So she does the dishes. She decides she's hungry. She eats. She goes. She sits down in her chair. Okay? It's 12:15. She gets a phone call from Sue. Now the conversation goes like this from the abnormal aging brain. No, Sue, we did not talk about going to the mall today. What, for lunch? Well, I've already had my lunch, and I'm too full now to eat. Well, sure, I would like to meet you and catch up. What, my grandbabies? Oh, yes, they're fine. Sure, I have pictures of them. We should meet sometime. Let me show them to you. No, Mary, we did not talk about meeting today. I'm worried about you. You might need to see the doctor. I think maybe you've got that dementia. Well, okay, well, call me sometime and let's catch up. Okay, That is the abnormal. Now we have forgotten everything that took place earlier. And not only that, but it's somebody else's fault. It's not my fault that I never knew anything about it. Maybe someone else has the problem, okay? So the next one, there we go. Just like Sarah said, very normal. We do forget our words. It's difficult to find that word sometimes, okay? And that again is because of normal shrinkage of the brain. The brain cells are not connecting. It's called synapsis, being able to make that quick synapsis to be able to recall that word, but we're able to use those strategies. So a conversation may be like this. Well, yes, Mary or Sue, we can meet outside of, what's the name of that store? You know, the Prophets used to own it. You know, that's a great family that was around here. It was called Prophets, and I think at one time it was called Parisians. Let me think. Belk. That's right, Belk. Okay, that's totally normal. Sometimes we have to go all the way around the world and back to get to that word, but we get to it, okay? Abnormal brain aging, when we get concerned, is when we no longer can recall those subject words, those content words. We're substituting everything with article words like them, those, their. Conversation may be like this. No, Sue, I'm not. You know, meet there, that place, sure. That thing outside of that, yeah, you're right, we'll meet there and I'll bring those. Yes, I can't wait to see you. Okay. That's abnormal when all of a sudden now we can't be able to form those words, get those sentences together. That is because, remember that brain, it has shrunk, and now we have holes in the left temporal lobe. That is where all of our language is stored. That's where we learn vocabulary words. We learn how to string words together to make sentences. Now remember that, because I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. All right? And I'll find my arrow again. Confusion. This is very, very, very common as we get more mature, okay? Learning new tasks, like being able to use a telephone. That is a cell phone. Totally normal to have some difficulty with that. Maybe seeing someone and we can't remember their name, okay? But again, like we said, we can use those strategies. We can come all back around, okay? Maybe the situation like this happened, Mary gets to the mall to meet Sue, but can't quite remember where they said they were going to meet. Now, where was they going to meet? Let me go back. She said something about a hop, skip, and a jump away from restaurants. I know restaurants are up towards the upper end of the mall, close to Belk. What if I just stand outside in that area? Maybe I'll find her. Totally normal, okay? Abnormal. We can't remember details. We get very frustrated. We often walk away from that situation, okay? We go to the mall now. We're going to meet Sue. We can't remember where we're going to meet Sue. We walk in, we're looking around, trying to find those visual cues, because that's what we did when our brain was young. We could find a visual cue and that would remind us. But now we don't have that anymore. But I see something interesting. There's some people over there that are talking, and they look like they're having fun, or maybe there's something down there. I'm going to wander off down there. I'm going to go find out what's going on. Next thing I know, I am all the way outside the mall, and I have now entered Publix, okay? And we're thinking, how did I get here? Why am I here? I don't have the ability anymore to retrace my steps to be able to go back to figure out what was it that I was doing. Okay? Hopefully this is making a little bit of sense to you. Mood swings. Sarah mentioned this as well. I am recently a grandma. I have a 2.5-week-old and a 3.5-week-old. Let me tell you, that week was the most stressful week of my life. Thank you, Blount Memorial, for having patience with me during that time. I may or may not gotten a little bit grumpy in my home, okay, because I was tired, and that's normal. It's normal when we get a little more mature to be tired, to get a little grouchy, to not want to go to the mall. uncomfortable. We don't want to go. I don't want to get out of my comfortable environment. I don't want to get out of my pajamas, okay? But we can say, hey, you know what? It'll be good for me. I need the exercise. Sue is a good friend. I want to keep that relationship. I can go for an hour and come back, okay? So we're mad for a few minutes. We get back into it. Abnormal. Somebody asks us to do something and we don't want to do it, and we get angry about that. We get very upset. I can't believe she called me and asked me to go to the mall. I don't want to go to the mall. I don't want to leave my house. It's cold. I don't want to eat out. I've got food here, okay? That anger then goes on, is irrational, and it lasts all day long. They may forget what actually made them mad, what the situation was, but the mood stays with them for hours, okay? The more you try to reason, the angrier they get, okay? Inability to understand sarcasm, okay? So remember a minute ago when I talked about our language factor, our language being able to recall words, and that's in our left temporal lobe, okay? The right side of our body, or right side of our brain, is the area that can understand music and poetry and jokes and sarcasms. It hears vocabulary words, it hears phrases that says, whoops, what? That's not what it means. Like for instance, I still have a very hard time when I hear the new young people use words like, that was really sick, that's really dope. Okay, I go to, somebody's throwing up because they're taking illegal drugs. I mean, that makes sense to me because that's my left brain. But I know that young people, they're using opposites. Sick or dope actually means that's wonderful, that's great, that's fantastic. Where they came up with it, I don't know, okay? So I'm able to do that. Abnormal brain function, we no longer can understand that. We do not have the ability to understand jokes or sarcasm. We take things very literal, very concrete. Conversation may now go like this. No, Sue, I am not going to jump, and I most certainly am not going to hop or skip. I've done that. I haven't done that in years. If I tried now, I'd probably break my ankle. I'll meet you at the mall, but I'm going to walk to the restaurants. Okay, so there's the difference in that. Inability to perform simple tasks, okay? We get more mature, all of a sudden we're like, you know what? I really don't want to do that laundry anymore, you know? I don't have to do it. It can sit there tomorrow. We got plenty of clothes. I don't want to do that. That's completely normal. Maybe we just don't have, we don't want to perform because it makes us tiring and it's exhausting, okay? Abnormal, though, is when we don't remember how to perform that task. We do go to the laundry room and maybe we dump tons and tons of clothes in the washer. Or maybe we only wash one item at a time and continuously go back. Or we forget how to do the settings on the washer. Another one would be the telephone. Sue calls Mary. Mary looks around. What's that noise? What's that? Oh, that's the phone. Mary reaches over and grabs the remote control to the television and starts talking into the remote control. And it's getting mad. Hello? Hello? Who's there? Who's there? It doesn't realize that this is a remote control anymore and gets mad. Or she picks up her own phone and now she can't remember how to answer it, how to push the buttons, and gets mad because someone else has changed her phone. Somebody's messed her phone up, okay? Blames it on somebody else. So, repetition. Love this. We see this often. It's completely normal for the aging brain now to have to do things in a routine. Just like Sarah asked, do we lose our car keys? I looked over at Lauren and I said, no, because I put them, Blount Memorial is so nice to give us a car to drive when we do home health. but I always make sure I put those keys in a separate place from the rest of my keys or my husband's keys. So I'll always know where those are, okay? It's repetition, because don't tell my bosses they're in the room that I may or may not run late a couple of times, every day of the week. Anyway, so I do home health. So I need to grab those keys real quick. That's completely normal, okay? It's also normal in a conversation to maybe even repeat some of the information that was said earlier, just to make sure that you really did understand and you processed that. What is and it's normal maybe to go to the grocery store the same day, the same time, in the same store that you're going to and buy similar items. It's abnormal to go every single solitary day and get the exact same one item over and over. It's also abnormal to repeat stories in the same conversation every 5 minutes, okay? Similar conversation. Sue calls Mary, they have this great conversation about meeting at the mall, but Mary adds, hey, maybe we'll have enough time to see if Belk is having a sale on their shoes. I really need a new pair of shoes. I no longer care about how I look anymore. I just want to be comfortable. Maybe they'll have a sale on those SAS shoes. And then Sue says, well, we can see when we get to the mall. I'll need to go now. I'll see you at 12 outside of Belk and we'll eat. Don't forget to bring those baby pictures. Mary says, oh, I won't. I keep them with me all the time. I can't wait to meet you at the mall. Hey, maybe Belk will be having a sale on their shoes. I really need a new pair of shoes. I don't care how I look any longer. I just want to be comfortable. Hope they have a sale on those SAS shoes. That is abnormal when you have to repeat yourself every 5 minutes, okay? Or you do the same thing frequently. Got just a couple more here. Loss of interest. Very, very normal as we get more mature. Our aging brain says, you know what? I've been cleaning my house for 50, 60, 70 years now. I am done. I don't want to do this anymore. I can hire somebody to do this. I can get a family member to come do that. That's very, very normal. It's also very normal to have some depression, okay? It's estimated that roughly 70% of all, once they mature, elderly patient or elderly persons will have some form of depression. And the depression comes from a lack of their independence, losing independence. They're no longer as safe going places and doing things. So 70% of all people of age will experience depression. What is abnormal, however, is to forget to do those things, lose that interest of doing your basic activities of living, like bathing, eating, dressing, all those things that we have to do to keep us, functioning. We don't want to do that anymore. And that is because, again, the way that brain started to shrink and those holes, we've lost those executive function skills of planning, organizing, sequencing. Our concentration is all diminished, okay? So, the conversation may be this. Sue calls Mary. Mary answers the phone. She goes, no, I don't want to go. Hangs up. There is no conversation. Mary's not going to go, okay? Husband asks why. She just don't want to go, okay? So that is abnormal when we completely withdraw from doing everything, even our basic skills. Falls. It is very normal as we get more mature to have falls, and that is from pain. We may have we've had hip replacements, knee replacements, our joints aren't working quite as well as it once did, our balance is off, our vision is off, but normal aging brain goes, you know what, I may fall. I don't want to fall. If I fall, my children are really going to get onto me, and they may want me to go to some home, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to use my rollator. I'm going to be careful. I'm going to avoid those situations, okay? Abnormal, frequent falls, forgetting to use their assistive device. They are very predictable in their falls. Phone rings, Mary jumps up very quickly. She forgets her assistive device, which is a cane or a rollator. She quickly gets to the phone before they hang up. On the way, she bumps into furniture because our abnormal brain can no longer navigate. We can't go through curves and to move around furniture. Because when we do that, we have to change the speed of our gait, and we have to make wider strides in our gait, and our brain can't do that. So we walk straight, bumping into furniture and walls, reaching for the phone, then we misjudge how far it is, and we fall to the point that every time the phone rings, Mary's husband goes, "I'll get it, I'll get it." So, abnormal. And the last one here, problems coping with change or not wanting to leave their environment. It is normal to have what we call cognitive overload, and that is a true term, cognitive overload. That's when we're getting too much stimuli at once, too much visual, too much auditory, too many movements, too many things are going on, and we can't. And so leaving our home that is comfortable, is very routine, is quiet, is the way that we want it. You know, it's normal to want to stay there. But normal is like we know we have to go, we do go, we are able to adjust after a few minutes and be able to filter out all that background noise, be able to meet Sue, have lunch, and look at baby pictures. An abnormal situation may be like this. Mary refuses to go to the mall. She doesn't want to go to the mall. She doesn't want to leave where she's comfortable and she knows what's going on. Husband insists that she goes. We need to get out. We're going to go. Gets to the mall. She gets very nervous. She gets very confused, gets disoriented, becomes very distracted. She may start shadowing Sue. Everywhere Sue goes, Mary wants to be right beside her, doing everything. She may ask questions like, what do we do next? Where are we going? Why are we doing this? And she says, no, Sue, I don't want to go off to Belk. I don't want to look at shoes. Okay, that is abnormal function. So hopefully giving you a little bit of an example, maybe you kind of saw yourself in some of the, the normal, and maybe not worry anymore that, okay, this is normal. What am I going to look at for the abnormal? So again, our biggest key is if you can remember that you have forgotten, or you remember that you're not remembering, then you are okay. Okay? That is good. That's what you want to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass this off to Lori Bishop, who has been experiencing this firsthand with both of her parents, two different similarities, and so she's going to give you some real life examples.
This is my mom and dad. This is a picture when they were celebrating their 60th anniversary, and they just celebrated their 67th anniversary. So issues with my dad were the first that we saw. First of all, I was laughing earlier when Julie said I'm an expert. These are like professional experts. So what's a certified financial planner do that makes her an expert? One is experience, but I also became a certified trainer for the Dealing with Dementia workshop Rosalind Carter does. So I'm very invested in my parents, so I learned a lot that way. So I wanted to share just kind of recapping some of the things that they said and what I saw in my parents, because they have different types of dementia, so hopefully this will be helpful. Dad, 2015 was when everything started with him, and the first things that we saw, he all of a sudden got very depressed. It was like he went off a cliff. He was the most jovial, happy guy you could ever meet. And all of a sudden, he got very withdrawn. He was paranoid, just not his normal self. And had some mood swings, that we talked about. from depression. We did see some anger out of him, and my dad has never been angry and talked ugly to my mom in their lifetime. So that was very unusual. The confusion was another one, and that was Mom called me and she goes, I'm worried about your dad because he will get up in the morning and stand at the foot of the bed, and if I say, what are you doing? He says, I don't know what to do next. And she would say, well, put on your robe and go sit down in your chair and I'm going to make us breakfast. And he'd put his robe on and still be standing there. And she'd say, what are you doing? I don't know what to do next. So there was obviously something going on. But we, as family members, we always come up with excuses. Well, probably, maybe that new medication is, throwing him off. Or all these different reasons why we think, that things are going on. It takes a little while to really realize, okay, this is more than just normal aging. Communication changes were a big one with Dad. He said very little. Just yes, no answers. His pat answer for Mom was always no. Every time she would do something, no, don't do that, don't do that. He spoke very quietly. He would, which I know a lot of people in this room who know me will agree, that I said too many words. He would say, too many words. And I'm like, am I out of words for you today? And he goes, yes. And I said, how about Mom? And he'd say, she's got just this many left. So we would laugh about that, and say, and if I would visit him, I would say, am I talking too much? And he'd say, yeah. So I had to be careful with that. He got very anxious when he was around one or two people talking, especially in a bigger crowd. If my brothers and their spouses and kids all came in, he was very anxious. I'll tell you real quickly, he was diagnosed initially with frontotemporal dementia, meaning this front part of your brain that is executive functioning. That's why he didn't know what to do next, because this part of his brain was deteriorating. It wasn't telling him what to do next. And in groups where people are talking, he would get anxious because he couldn't follow the conversation. And being somebody who was always, in a conversation, it made him really uncomfortable. People are going to notice that I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. So he got very quiet and withdrawn. The inability to understand sarcasm. My younger brother actually is driving in today to see Dad, but early on, my dad and my younger brother are like 12-year-old boys together. Always that inappropriate humor. And my brother would call him an old fart, and different things like that. They just laughed and they thought that was funny. I had to tell Greg, do not call him an old fart. He's not going to think it's funny. He doesn't have any sense of humor anymore. It's like it got sucked out of him. Any joy, anger, he just was a flatline emotion kind of person. And that a lot of times has to do with dementia. Loss of interest. He gardened, he traveled, they would do dinners out or have people over for dinner all the time. That stopped for him. Doesn't always stop that quickly. For him, it was a very quick onset. He was not interested in any of that. They had a mountain house. He had a whole bank of wildflowers. My husband and I would have to go up and take care of it. It looked like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Jumanji, where things just grow up and take over the world. That's what it looked like. There were weeds taller than my husband, Dad wanted nothing to do with anything that he so enjoyed before. So pretty clear evidence of that. Later on, so he was first diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. Later, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's and then diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. So my dad has the gamut. However, his memory for a 90-year-old man at this point is not that bad. He remembers a lot of things. In fact, there have been times when I would say, Dad, where did we live when we had that dog? And he would say, Rocky Mount. He still knows things like that. He doesn't speak much, but on days he will talk with us, he can answer questions. Let's switch to Mom, because Mom was his caregiver. So we knew she was kind of down. that whole depression thing. And that would be normal. There are many caregivers. If you're a caregiver in this room, you understand what I'm saying. When you care for somebody who has issues like that, it does get depressing. This was her husband, who has loved her for her whole life almost. And all of a sudden, she doesn't even know who he is. So, of course, she was depressed. The things that we noticed most were confusion. Mom and I attended Edward Harper, which is now Julie's support group. And at first we thought, well, this is just depression for Dad, but we're taking care of him so we would come. It was that support group that let us know this is more than depression. So we went religiously to this support group, and I do recommend, if you are dealing with this at all, as a caregiver particularly, come to a support group, because you will, one thing is, you'll leave feeling a whole lot better, because there are going to be people who will tell horrific stories, and there's always something to be thankful for when you leave, and to learn something. There were a couple of times that I did not go to the support group because I was meeting with a client or something like that, and Mom went without me. And two people totally separate from each other who were experts in the field, Edward being one, and another lady who ran an adult day center. Both of them approached me and said, something's going on with your mom. And I said, why would you say that? And they said, well, you weren't there the other day. And she got very confused and was talking off subject, and you can, if you've done it as long as I've done it, you can see it in their eyes. And I thought, how strange. Now I can see it in people's eyes. If you talk with somebody, you can see there's something you're not hitting on all cylinders kind of thing. But they told me that, and they said, if there's anything worse than having to care for somebody with dementia, it's somebody with dementia caring for somebody with dementia. And now I'm next in line because I care for both of them, and my husband, sometimes says, you're okay. Like, I think I'm losing it too, But, so confusion at the support group. I do some life coaching stuff, and I was having her I wanted her to draw like a pie chart, like a pie divided up. And I said the easiest way I could tell her to do that was draw a circle. So she drew the circle, and I said, now put a little dot at 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8, 10, around the clock. And she sat there for a minute with a pen, and I said, what's wrong? She goes, I don't remember which way the clock runs. And I'm like, now that is not normal. So I kind of stored that in the back of my mind. I put Life 360 it's an app, and I put that on her phone because then I could see her, and know where she is, and just in case something happened. I watched her twice. One day she was going to Alcoa to a doctor's appointment. It was a straight shot. She was at Morning View Village in Independent Living. She would have turned out of the parking lot, gone left, turned right into the doctor's office. I saw her on Life 360 in Townsend. So she completely, and she had a GPS too, she completely went the wrong direction. Another time she was going to Sevierville. And I actually called her because I was worried. She told me the night before she was going to Sevierville to take a sewing class or something like that. And I said, now do you know, because they had moved to Maryville at that point, do you know how to get there? I have my GPS, I know how to do it. And she got mad because how dare I say there was anything that she needed to be concerned about. She called me from Gatlinburg. She was right outside the pancake pantry. And I said, she goes, I think I messed up. And I said, why? She said, are you in Sevierville? And she goes, no, I'm in Gatlinburg. I'm like, okay. So anyway, and then she made it to her destination, and as she was pulling in the parking lot, I called her, and she goes, I'm pulling in the parking lot right now. I could hear she's on gravel parking lot, And I said, okay, great, just wanted to check on you. Went back, sat down in my meeting. She calls me and says, I just want to let you know, I just got here, everything's okay, I already knew that. The other thing was, she didn't know where her coffee cups were in her own house. And she goes, well, I hadn't been in this mountain house in a while, but you've lived here 20 years, Mom. And so that was disturbing. inability to perform simple tasks. My mom taught me all about cooking. She was almost like a Betty Crocker. She called me one time because she didn't know how to thaw out meat. And I'm like, you taught me how to thaw out meat. You know, so there are little things like that. My husband said, that's kind of like Betty Crocker saying, what's this? And it being a spoon, you know. Mood swings, I talked about depression. She also got very angry. And part of it was because I was trying to help her. And she didn't need any help. Nothing's wrong with her, you know. So there's that kind of thing. Repetition. Becky mentioned that as well. Mom, early on we noticed she would call and tell me something on the phone and ask, would y'all like to come over to eat tonight? I was thinking about making beef burgundy or whatever. And then she'd call 10 minutes later. Hey, I was thinking, why don't y'all come over for dinner tonight? I was thinking about making beef burgundy. And I was like, okay. And then by the third and fourth, fifth time she called, I was running in my husband's office, putting her on speakerphone. She's calling again, you know, the same thing. So I knew we were dealing with something more. But those are kind of stories about my parents. Mom does have Alzheimer's. That's why her confusion and memory are the worst. And Dad has a lot of others. But I appreciate y'all being here today. I do want to tell you, Julie had mentioned it, we do have a Dealing with Dementia program that we do on a regular basis. The next one is going to be April 26th in Tellico Village, but we have one coming to Maryville May 25th. And I do not have a flyer in there. It will be in the paper. So, as Julie said, we have first and third Tuesday support groups, second and fourth Thursday support groups. But thank you for coming. And
Thank you.